Hey everybody, welcome into the back room. I'm Andy Ostroy. Very excited for our conversation today with Zerlina Maxwell. We will get to Zerlina shortly. But first, let's start with our one big thing this week. And guess what?
Is it Trump?
It's not Trump.
What?
Well, indirectly it is. But it's the impeachment. And I'm not talking, it's the impeachment of
Wait, is he being impeached a third time?
No, it's the impeachment of what many people are calling the most corrupt president in history. And no, I'm not talking about Donald Trump. I'm talking about Joe Biden.
Oh, yes, that.
That impeachment. Well, you probably have to be living under a rock by now not to know that Republicans and Kevin McCarthy and Marjorie Taylor Greene, they are opening up an impeachment inquiry into the massive criminality, which, by the way, there's not an ounce of evidence of President Biden and the Biden crime family. Now, this is so important that they have chosen to completely neglect the twice impeached, 4 times indicted, brought up on 91 felony charges, actual criminal, actual head of an actual crime family, because what's happening with Biden is just so much more important and so much greater threat to America.
Oh, that's pretty clear that Kevin McCarthy really has no control over Congress, and it's Matt Gaetz. And that's who's running things, is that crowd.
Well, Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene and what I and others call the crazy caucus. You know, look, McCarthy's dream in life was to be House Speaker back in January, when it looked like he wasn't going to be, and they had to have those, 15, 16, 18 votes or whatever it was. He cut a backroom deal, which we still don't know what's in it. In fact, Matt Gaetz, who cut the deal, was on with Ari Melber the other night, and he couldn't even produce a copy of the document. So he can't even discuss what's in it. We don't know what's in it, what was promised, but apparently people are pissed off at Kevin McCarthy, and they're demanding that he open this impeachment inquiry. And I want to talk about the hypocrisy of all this in a second, but it is such a scam. And so on the one hand, you have McCarthy, who's got 4 votes majority in his House, in his leadership. You have the motion to vacate hanging over his head. You have Matt Gaetz, who is publicly sparring with him now because he believes McCarthy reneged on this January deal. You have Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's saying, if you don't impeach Biden, I'm not voting to keep the government open. I mean, it's a fucking clown show.
You know, this is what happens when you choose not to have policy ideas that you've been working on, when you choose to not govern. This is what you do. You deflect. You make sure that the American people, this is in the interest of politics versus, protecting the rights and things that we should be providing to our constituents.
Yeah, I mean, the impeachment in this country is reserved for high crimes and misdemeanors. It is reserved for the most egregious violations of a president's oath or any politician's oath or a judge. They could be impeached too. And for it to be used, as to your point, as a political weapon is just outrageously offensive and a shattering of a very important norm and boundary in this country. You just don't fucking impeach a president because A, you lost, or B, you don't like his policies, or C, you're trying to protect your guy. It's just, what does impeachment mean anymore if these guys just use it as a political weapon?
Well, this is exactly what Donald Trump wanted. He had a dinner with Marjorie Taylor Greene where they talked about halibut and whatnot. And now this is where we're at. And there's really no surprise. What's interesting is that Kevin McCarthy just a week earlier said we'll have to have a vote on impeachment, which of course makes some sense. But then when he realized he would never get that vote, and then the crazies in the party were like, no, you got to do this because of the secret 3-page agreement they had in order to allow him to be speaker, which apparently Matt Gaetz his friend has it, but he doesn't have it and can't find it.
Right.
Because 3 pages is very hard to locate. We can only assume that in those 3 pages, there's probably some parts that are so insane they don't want it to be public.
That's so true.
Yeah, well, the gist of it, I mean, I'll summarize without even saying it. The gist of it is, okay, we'll vote to make you House Speaker, Kev, but after that, you do whatever the fuck we want. Or one of us, because that's all it will take, one of us will file a motion to vacate and you're out of your speakership.
Right. And back in May, actually, Kevin McCarthy did an adult thing for once, and he worked with Biden to raise the debt ceiling and the continuing resolution so that they would go through fiscal year 2024 without having, shutting down the government 18 times over. But that was a bridge too far for the crazies in the party. So now this is what they need. And they're going to shut down the government probably too.
And then jumping on that, I think you're right. I think the government will shut down. It's going to be Joe Biden's fault. Right.
Well,
that's how it's going to be spun. And I don't understand how that works.
Well, it's all Joe Biden's fault. Republicans have not done a great job at winning the past few years, but where they have won often is in shaping a narrative, in defining people, in defining situations. And the media, as always, just jumps on that worm and then dangles on the hook, and that's it.
It's infuriating.
It is totally infuriating. And the hypocrisy of it all is so infuriating. Look, I could stand here as a Democrat and say, I want Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, Jill Biden, any Democrat to be prosecuted and imprisoned if they've committed crimes. I don't care who they are. Same goes for Trump and his family. But when the other side completely, willfully chooses to just completely ignore the Constitution, the rule of law, and the criminality of Donald Trump and his kids and Jared Kushner and all the ethical violations and laws that they've breached and broken, and just harp on Biden. That's where the credibility is zero. That's where it's clear it's political. And to use the government, I mean, this is the part that just kills me. It's like, hey guys, let's weaponize the government against the Bidens. But what we're going to do is we're just going to create this fucking awesome campaign where we're accusing them of weaponizing against us. Right. And we'll all get caught up in this 24/7 fucking debate about how Joe Biden is using the blah, 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 blah. And then we'll just do the exact same fucking thing and nobody will notice. That's what they do over and over and over again. Do it and accuse the other side of doing it.
It's a winning strategy for them in many ways. So why not stick to it if you don't have any moral compass?
But the other thing that gets me is, like, people like us can loathe Mitch McConnell, but we can also respect his long game. He's always had a long game.
Of undermining the government?
Whatever. It's always been a long game, and he's played within certain boundaries.
It's true.
He's just been a snaky politician. But what I don't understand is all of this is a short game. It does not do anything for them in a general election, as we've seen.
I'm not 100% convinced of that.
Well, I'm talking about to date. To date, none of this shit, and especially the Hunter Biden stuff, they consistently underestimate the mood of the country. There isn't a family in this country that isn't dealing with addiction, that isn't dealing with somebody who is suffering, and to attack Hunter Biden the way they do and attack Joe Biden for it, that to me is going to backfire. Like all of this shit, the impeachment stuff, there isn't a suburban mom who's going, I hated these fuckers in 2020, but now that they're going after Joe Biden for absolutely nothing, they got my vote.
When gas prices are high and food prices are high and you're at the supermarket and in the back of your mind you're like, screw all these righteous elitist people talking about the government, the what's right, January 6th. All this is nonsense. No, I think you're underestimating.
No, I'm not at all.
Okay.
I'm not at all.
Because
we just had an election in 2022. Republicans were supposed to pick up 40 to 60 seats in the House. They got 4. And that's because inflation has come down. It's come down from 9% to 3%.
But gas
so people
prices are going back up.
Yeah, but I think I don't think that they punish a president for that.
Inshallah.
In either way. I'm just saying that up until this day, all of this shit that they pull has not benefited them. At the polls, the support, the fealty to Trump gets the he's very successful when it comes to chalking up wins in the primaries, but it's the exact opposite when it comes to the general.
It's love great. That you're such an optimist.
It's great when you get Trump's nomination in the primary, and it's the kiss of fucking death when you go up against your Democrat opponent in the general.
But that's happened in 2022. It remains to be seen in 2024 what happens, because right now what they're doing is probably going to be very effective at sort of dampening the impact of Trump's convictions, which are probably going to happen, certainly his indictments, which have already happened. And if they can muddy the waters and you have independents who say, oh, they're both, a pox on both their houses because they're both so corrupt, so, I'll vote for the one where my eggs were less expensive.
Let's keep in mind, Hunter Biden is not running for president. His dad is. And by the time that election comes along, as good as we're sitting here, we know that there's not going to be one indictment, one conviction, one shred of evidence against Joe Biden. I could pretty much guarantee you that. And I'm sorry, but your fucking son was a drug addict and bought a gun. Ain't moving the soccer moms, the independents, the suburban people back to Trump.
Going back to what you
Boom.
said. Going back to what you said about evidence, they don't need evidence. All they're going to do is have hearing after hearing, and they're going to ask the White House for things that the White House will never produce, and they will make giant...
Who watches those hearings, though? Do you think the majority of voters watch those hearings?
It doesn't matter. It's on Fox News. It's going to be spun.
It's going to be everywhere.
Evidence was withheld. Boom.
Evidence? No,
are you throwing?
As soon as they don't give
Drop
something.
the mic.
Are you throwing my arrogance back in my face?
Benghazi lasted 4 years, that investigation. Of course, there was no evidence of anything wrong because it was nonsense from the beginning. But many people will argue, I think,
to this
correctly, that Hillary Clinton may have been damaged beyond repair because of that, among other things.
Well, I would agree with you on some level that it was a distraction, but I think you take James Comey out of that picture in the last couple of weeks, and you got a Hillary Clinton victory.
Pizzagate.
I don't think what you're referring to. The other thing is people have a short memory. You got to understand, most Americans are not very plugged into politics, and so and they also have very short memories, and so. I can guarantee you the Hunter Biden thing, it's going to come and go quickly. And all it's going to be, and by the way, again, speaking of hypocrisy, prosecutor after prosecutor after prosecutor that's been on TV has said, I've never seen indictments for this kind of stuff. If his name wasn't Biden, it wouldn't happen. And so what we are talking about is an addict who lied about a gun purchase, which, by the way, if his name was Eric Trump, the fucking right wing would be going ballistic making this a 2A issue, and Eric would be a Second Amendment hero.
And this is where we all agree. So, the three of us.
Boom.
So
wait. So the hypocrisy of it is stunning in itself. But a year from now, you're going to be looking at Hunter Biden way back in the rearview mirror. And again, he's not running for president.
I don't think we'll be looking at it in the rearview mirror because there will be hearing after hearing after hearing, and he'll probably be charged for some tax problems as well. So this will drag on for months and months and months. And of course, there's incredible hypocrisy because George Santos, who's in the House of Representatives, was indicted on 13 counts, including literally lying on his disclosure forms to the House of Representatives, and they don't seem to care about that.
And I'd like to also say that my confidence is with Democratic messaging, Democrat with a big D.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that they'll be able to say something to the effect that when Marjorie Taylor Greene says that she wants to go after every single one of them and use the Department of Justice to prosecute them, I think the Democrats have a lot that they can use to persuade the court of opinion of the American people that this isn't right.
Yeah.
I just think they have to be really targeted and clear and consistent, just like the Republicans.
Yeah, and they're going to use Trump's own words. In this Megyn Kelly interview he did this week, she asked him, if you were to become president again, would you go after Democrats the way they're coming after you? Would you prosecute? Would you impeach? Would you? And he goes, well, yeah, because of what was done to me, that it's being done now. So he's admitting that this impeachment of Biden and all of it is just a sham. Okay, so that brings us to our winners and losers.
First, I'd like to say Shana Tova to all the people who are listening today, and
a Shania Twain to you,
and a Shania Twain to you, Andy, and I'm wishing everyone a sweet new year. My winner, Senator Mitt Romney, the grandfather of Obamacare, will be walking away at the end of his term. Thank you, Senator, for your service to our country. My loser, Dreamers. A federal judge again rejected DACA that has shielded hundreds of thousands of undocumented young adults from deportation, saying that it remained unlawful even after recent changes.
I'm going to go ditto on Mitt Romney because I couldn't find many winners this week. And although I don't like the way he treats his dog, I will definitely say that seeing Mitt Romney unplugged is a good thing. My loser is the Wisconsin Republicans, who are attempting to illegally fire Wisconsin's election administrator, Megan Wolf, without any cause at all. And this is just a continuation of their anti-democratic views.
My winner, the Pennsylvania State Police for capturing armed escaped murderer Danilo Cavalcante. Because it's always a good thing when an escaped murderer is captured. My loser, Aaron Rodgers, New York Jets quarterback. I was at that game, and the guy goes down with a ruptured Achilles after like 4 plays. All right, let's get to Zerlina Maxwell. She is a senior director of progressive programming for SiriusXM. She is the host of Mornings with Zerlina on SiriusXM Channel 127 and hosted Zerlina on MSNBC on PeacockTV for 2 seasons. She's the author of the book, The End of White Politics, How to Heal Our Liberal Divide. She was an MSNBC political analyst for a decade. She's worked on both Barack Obama's 2008 and Hillary Clinton's 2016 presidential campaigns. She's also a keynote speaker and writer and has written for numerous national publications on subjects including national politics, policy and culture issues, including race, feminism, domestic violence, sexual assault, victim blaming, and gender inequality. Zerlina, welcome into the back room.
Thank you so much for having me.
So you've been around for a while, but I think it would be interesting to get a sense of who you are, where you came from, your background, your childhood. Tell us about little Zerlina. Where did you grow up, and what kind of kid were you?
Oh, I was very curious. My nickname as a child was Little Miss Question, which I find very appropriate in hindsight. My dad gave me that nickname as a child because I just wouldn't shut up. I was always asking where we're going, what we're doing, why is that person doing that, what are they wearing, why are they, like everything about everything. I was asking about it, and I feel like that serves me well in a profession now where my job is to ask people questions. So I was very curious as a child, but also very brave. As a small, I was born in New York, but grew up mostly in New Jersey, and my first sport was gymnastics. And that was because I used to climb on everything and jump off. And my parents were like, she's going to die. So they put me in gymnastics. And I feel like everything I am today, I can usually link it back to something I learned with that being my very first sport. Because I was very serious about it and competitive until I was 15. So little Zerlina was curious, but also quite brave. Like I somehow acquired a fear of heights now. But then I didn't have any of that. No fear and curiosity.
Have you ever skydived or?
No.
How about roller coasters?
I like roller coasters because you're strapped in. There's a difference for me, I think, when I know I can fall versus when I know I'm strapped in and like there's all this, physics and engineering in place to make sure that I'm secure. My friend did ask me a couple months ago, like if I wanted to go skydiving, and I almost did it like on a whim, but then I was like, maybe that's not necessarily an impulse decision. And then also she was like, I got a Groupon, and I was like, I don't know if I want to do skydiving with a Groupon, but I'm interested in maybe
Yeah,
trying
you
it
might
at
want to pay
some point.
extra. Let's go for the one
That's
that's
what I was
extra
thinking.
money.
Right. Like I want to pay more and get all the extra.
The better instructor, not
Yeah,
the
exactly.
discount guy
Right. Exactly.
who just started like 2 weeks ago, which is
Right,
why
right,
it's on
exactly.
Groupon. And little Zerlina, in terms of politics and news, when did you get a first inkling of all that craziness in the world and have it be interesting to you?
I feel like it was on my own. My parents didn't steer me any direction either way. I have a very vivid memory of 1988, which sounds so specific, but I'm going to tell you why I remember the date is because I remember arguing with my dad in the kitchen as a child about the fact that he wouldn't mind me saying he was going to vote for George H.W. Bush. And I was like, you're not supposed to be doing that. That's not correct. You're not supposed to be. And I'm like listing off all the reasons why, but I'm like 7 or 8 maybe at that point. So it was not something that my parents told me to think this way or that way. I always had an opinion about it. I think that's because, number one, my mom told me stories about my grandfather who marched in Selma along with my mom's older sister, when she was 17 only. And so I just had, I don't know, I feel like it was in my blood in a way. It's in my DNA to care. It's in my DNA to have thoughts about it also and not be quiet about things that I see going on in the world that I don't think should be going that way. So as a 7-year-old child, I was very vocal. I remember actually even in like 2nd grade telling my classmates in line for school to tell their parents not to vote for George W. or H.W. Bush. Like I remember telling the kids that.
I think that's pretty amazing that as a 7-year-old, you were pretty much advocating for Mike Dukakis.
I know. It's like, what do I know?
Then he put that helmet on. He put that helmet on and it just rocked
Right.
your world, right?
I don't know. I don't know what it was. It was just, I knew that, I think it's because I watched a lot of news. I've always been like a voracious news consumer. So I feel like I was sitting there as a child and I'm sort of like listening. And I feel like one side spoke to me more than the other. And I decided that I was going to tell people to vote for Michael Dukakis. But I don't even know how I learned how to say his name. You know what I mean? But I was sure that I didn't want anybody voting for George H.W. Bush. I told everyone that, including my parents. And they're like, what are you talking to? You know, imagine a little child telling you who to vote for.
Wouldn't it be
that
great?
was what was happening in our kitchen.
Wouldn't it be smart if politicians just literally started grooming children at a young age into politics? It's just like with subtleties, like, you know, in their speeches, be like, and if I become president, no more bedtimes, and homework gone. And then just plant these seeds. And then all of a sudden the kid is 18. It's like, Democrats, no more homework, no bedtime.
Right.
Or pot.
That would actually be
pot,
a very funny
pot for everyone.
long-term plan.
Yes.
That would be a funny long-term plan.
Yeah, just plant the seeds.
There's a really funny joke on TikTok about Gen X, because Gen X, as you know, they're the parents of the Gen Zs. And Gen Z is quite radical and active. And Gen Z was very much a stifled sort of they were like the latchkey kid generation. They didn't have technology the way the millennials did. And so, you know, they got the short end of the stick in a lot of ways, Gen X. So but the joke is that they just waited until they like birthed the army. You know, that was it. And so I love that joke on TikTok because I think it demonstrates that, you know, with each generation, we can influence the kids and raise them up to want to change the world.
Everything starts at home. And so the things you were saying before about your interest in news and politics and wanting to do right by the world, is that what led you to law school?
Yes. There was a moment when I was watching Eyes on the Prize as a kid when I realized that the people that were So the activists were marching, people were organizing, and then the lawyers went to court. Like, I was like, wait, we're focusing a lot on Martin Luther King, and obviously all of this works together. But one of the critical pieces was Thurgood Marshall and the lawyers who argued these monumental constitutional law cases. And I realized that as a child, I was like, wait, there's power there. And in some ways, I feel like this is my advice for any of the aspiring lawyers out there. You should try to figure out before you attend law school what type of law you want to practice. Mm-hmm. You should try to answer that question. Even just give yourself 3 options before you go. Don't go to law school because you always wanted to go, or like you always wanted to be a lawyer in an abstract way. You want to know what you're going to do with the degree. So that's just like the pro tip. But for me, it was seeing the power of the lawyers, the civil rights attorneys who were going in to change the law and make the world more equitable. And I felt really inspired by that. And so I knew, even if I didn't go on to become one of them and work in that same way, the power, whatever they're teaching you in law school, has some power. That was something that I recognized as a kid.
Mm-hmm. And what made Big Zerlina eventually go, I want media, not law?
Well, I think it was the Obama campaign in 2008. I started school and took a break to go work on the campaign. And then by the time I went back, I was like, I don't want to be a lawyer. I had worked in many, many law firms at that point. Before law school, I worked in big law. I worked in medium-sized law firms. I worked in small law firms. I never met a happy lawyer, in any of my travels. Never met a lawyer that was like, man, I love my job. So happy here. Especially the big firm. I mean, everybody wants to go to law school and get that big, white shoe firm job, 6 figures. You think you're living the best life ever. And I was surrounded by miserable, unhappy people. And I realized that even though they were making a lot of money, that's not everything. And I reevaluated, what my passions were. It was like, do I want to do a job where I'm thinking and reading about politics all day, but my job has nothing to do with that? Or in the worst case scenario, it's actually going against some of my sort of values, right? Because I worked in a firm that represents, banks and entities that ideologically, it makes it hard to sleep at night in some context, depending upon what firm you're talking about. So for me, it was like, I was the person that in the law firm, this is during George W. Bush's administration, I was the person that all the lawyers who cared about politics, they would swing by my office just to chat. They're like, oh, I'm going to go talk to Zerlina about what's going on. Some of the conservative lawyers, liberal lawyers, didn't matter where they fell in the spectrum, but they knew I was the go-to person. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I realized then is that this is what I'm spending my time thinking about, hearing about while I'm here doing this other job. And my dad always said growing up that if you make your job the thing that you're passionate about and that you're doing anyway, it will never feel like work. And I'm not saying my job now doesn't feel like work, but I probably will be paying attention to all the same things anyway, so I might as well get paid, is how I look at it. So I ended up in media in large part because it's what I was already paying attention to. It was what I was already passionate about. And I realized, similarly to as a kid, when I recognized the power of the law, the media has enormous power to shape what we think about what is happening in the world. And for me, I was watching infuriating coverage of all types of events throughout the course of my youth, and also in college. The Iraq War comes to mind, to the point where I was like, I want to go disrupt that a little bit. Mm-hmm. I want to go sit there on the set with those people and debate them because they're not making sense or their argument isn't correct. And here are the 3 reasons why. And so I basically decided I can go do that. I was watching it all the time and I was like, I'm going to go do that with them.
But yours is definitely a strong, important voice, and for a lot of reasons. And you've also been very outspoken and with regard to Me Too issues. And I didn't really know this until I started doing my homework, that you were the victim of sexual assault in college.
So Wikipedia is incorrect. I don't know how to change that. It was not in college. It was after college. But yes, I am the survivor of sexual assault, and a large part of my work, and what I think, even outside of politics, what I'm most well known for is talking openly before Me Too, way before Me Too, about, not before the Harvey Weinstein iteration of Me Too, but before the national conversation of Me Too, was sexual assault, rape culture, the way in which we have normalized sexual assault, we blame victims of sexual assault, and just how it's steeped. We're steeped in it all the time. It's in our culture. We're swimming in this water full of misogyny, sexism, patriarchy, and for me, it wasn't. I never thought about like not talking about it, because for me, it's not something I feel ashamed about. It's something that happened to me because of somebody else's choice. And for me, not talking about it, not being like, wait a minute, I was blamed for my own assault. I don't want that to happen to anybody else. Being outspoken about it, that felt like almost like my destiny. Like, because I'm able to be clear. One of the things that my manager always says is that I have the ability to have clarity. And so for me, utilizing that, I was able to really create the space for a conversation about rape culture, creating viral hashtags before Harvey Weinstein's story broke in the New York Times in 2017, and Me Too took off and trended around the world.
And because it's been now about 5 years or so since the issue and the prominent cases exploded into the culture, do you see much change in the things you mentioned, the perceptions, the treatment of women, the believability, all the things that were so prominently on everyone's radar then? Have we slipped back to the way things were?
I have so many thoughts on that today specifically, because right now on TikTok, there's a trend where women are asking men, sometimes their partners and husbands, how often they think about the Roman Empire. And all the men are like, yeah, I think about that all the time, like maybe 3 times a week. And women are like, what? Why? Why are you thinking about, like, how do you have the capacity to think about that? But I think it actually illustrates this deeper point, which is that men have the space to think about the Roman Empire because women are spending all of their time thinking about how not to get kidnapped by men, assaulted by men, hurt by men. And so we don't have the time to think about the Roman Empire because we're trying to stay alive.
Maybe they're just fantasizing about the age of Caligula. That's probably my guess.
I mean, maybe that's it. I mean, I it's so funny. It's so fascinating to me because I actually traveled to Rome this year for the first time in my life, visiting all of the places, Colosseum, Vatican, and learning all of the history, because I did formalized tours with like an archaeologist, going down under the Colosseum and seeing all of the technology that they have literally invented. It's really amazing. Like when you think about all of the things in architecture, even the spacing of the railroad tracks that, you can link back to the Roman Empire. However, I don't think about that ever, ever. Unless somebody brings it up, I'm not thinking about it 3 times a week. And I think the point and how it relates to Me Too is that I don't think men realized until Me Too trended globally that almost every single person who identifies as a woman has experienced some form of harassment, assault, attempted or completed. And I think that the pervasiveness of the issue, that I think broke through 5 years ago. That's what broke through. Oh, this is happening to everyone. Hashtag Me Too was everybody. That's why it went viral. And I think that there was a moment where we did make progress because, people did lose their jobs and some people were held accountable, even if only temporarily, like Bill Cosby. But also some people were convicted and, sentenced to jail. In other cases, R. Kelly comes to mind. So yes, there was tangible change after the hashtag trended. However, there's always a backlash when there's progress on one of these cultural issues. And so while there was a lot of progress initially and people were, I think rightfully less inclined to victim blame as sort of the default response, I I think that shifted around the time of the Johnny Depp Amber Heard case. And I'm not sort of here to argue or debate the merits of each side of that, but I think the coverage, the media coverage, the social media conversation around that case illustrated that we had taken a step back in terms of our evolution on this issue, not victim blaming, not, trafficking in open misogyny towards people who have come forward talking about their experiences with abuse. And also, I think one of the more frustrating things is the idea of the perfect victim. And so we had sort of talked about that during Me Too, right? Victims of assault, they're chosen by the perpetrator. And oftentimes they're chosen because people, they don't think people will believe that person.
Right.
And I think that we made progress and we're living through very much a backlash now. Although I have to say, I think it's very important to note that the former president, Donald Trump, was found liable, and likely will have to pay significant, even more money than he was originally, the jury originally awarded in the federal aspect of the investigation. So it's important that the former president, we all marched in pink hats for a reason. That was because he said on Access Hollywood Tape he could do whatever he wanted to a woman. I don't have to say the sort of graphic line. He said he could do whatever he wanted to a woman as long as he's famous. And millions of people rejected that. And he has been found accountable in a court of law, liable for assaulting E. Jean Carroll, for raping E. Jean Carroll, even though they're trying to act like that's not what the jury said.
Well,
the
judge
clarified.
That's right.
The judge clarified that.
Mhm.
So, there's both progress you can point to and the backlash you can point to in the last 5 years.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was way more hopeful during that period than I am now, because now to me it's just like I feel about crime. You can commit a crime and go to prison tomorrow, and then the next day someone's going to commit the same crime. They don't learn by your mistakes. It's because certain people are inherently criminal. They're inherently bad, and they do their bad shit regardless of whether someone else who did the same bad shit yesterday was sent to prison for it. And so I kind of have come full circle on well, that was like a nice little spurt of I remember every day, well, he's going down. It was like one by one, Charlie Rose, it just was like dominoes. And then it just stopped. And it's not like the sexual assault went away. It's like, it's still happening. But why aren't these kingpins coming down at the rate and frequency that they were back during those initial years?
I think because now they know it's coming. I don't think they expected to be held accountable. And so you sort of saw them caught off guard when that hashtag went viral and, people started telling their stories. Now they see it coming. So I think people are more careful. I do. I think people are more careful, not in that they don't assault or harass people, but just in terms of how they do it so that they don't get caught for it. And that's very unfortunate. So what I would hope to see is more of the cultural piece of the conversation. Because my thing is that whenever I was talking about sexual assault and rape culture, I was never talking about legal accountability. My goal is to change the cultural conversation we're having so that there can be legal accountability. Because there rarely is legal accountability. I think it's 93% of rapers never go to jail ever. So the idea that we should only be talking about court and jail and the law, that I feel like is too limiting. And there's so many people out there who have been assaulted who will never see a day in court because they don't have any evidence to support their allegation. Is just their word against the other person who's going to deny it, because that's what happens. And then, you're left with just your trauma to deal with it with no mechanism for accountability. So the cultural conversation is very important to me, even more so in some contexts than the legal conversation, because that is so rare. I mean, I've been following closely what's happening with Danny Masterson's sentencing for 30 years. To get 30 years in prison, 30 to life, You can't even ask for parole until after the 30 years for rape. That is so rare. So people need to understand that the fact that that even happened is actually a significant piece of the story in and of itself. Do you know how much evidence they had to have in order for the sentence to be that significant? So I think we have a lot of work to do in terms of changing the cultural conversation. But I think that we can. Gen Z is way different when it comes to these issues than millennials and the elders.
What did you think of that video that Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis put out? I wanted to say for the listeners, Zerlina is rolling her eyes right now.
I made a face. Yeah, I made a face because, and again, I made a face, but also I guess like what I think about it is related to the fact that I made a face because I was looking so closely. A lot of times I watch things on mute. I watch the news on mute a lot just to see facial expressions. I watched myself on mute a lot when I would do TV just to see what I'm doing with my face without even the other pieces, because it is important sort of as you're presenting yourself in a medium like TV to care about that kind of thing. So I was looking at their faces and there's this one moment, I don't know why. I don't have any speculation or knowledge as to why, but if you watch it closely, there's a moment where Ashton says, Danny's family asked us to write these letters and we didn't think they would ever come out. Like, we just thought they were for the judge or whatever. That's what he's saying. And Mila's not talking in this portion, but she makes a face. And it's like, it's almost like, I don't know what she's thinking. I don't know what's happening. I don't know the context. I don't know them. But I noticed that. And a lot of like body language experts, people on TikTok are doing that analysis to what that could possibly mean. But I thought what's troubling about the entire ordeal is that it's actually irrelevant. It should be irrelevant that your friend of, however many years is like nice to you and good to these other people. They've just been sentenced for sexually assaulting multiple people, sentenced to 30 years to life. Like, they don't need your letter.
Right. Who cares about the guy you knew?
Right, because you didn't know the full person.
Right.
The whole point is that you actually didn't really know him. I think you should sit with that.
Well, it's like some women. This always gets me whenever like Harvey Weinstein or somebody else. I'd be like, he never touched me. Well, what does that mean? Like that? Does that mean he didn't rape somebody else because he never touched you?
Right.
What does that mean?
I hate whenever men are accused, and this has happened in public, where they put out character letters from other women they did not assault.
Right.
As if that's supposed to be helpful information.
Well, just the notion or the belief by some people that in order to be guilty, you have to be sexually assaulting every woman you've ever encountered in your life. Otherwise, other women are not believable.
Right. And it doesn't happen that way. The dynamic is that the person that is an abuser, textbooks will tell you they are nice and charming and the great guy and the active parent and dad and, they're the nice guy. You never think that's how they get away with it, because they're like putting forward a completely false persona and a mask in front of everyone else. And how they are in private is where the allegation comes from.
Yeah. Well, it's like if a guy robs a liquor store. It doesn't matter if like 20 other liquor store owners go, he never robbed my store. Like,
right.
Like, what is that? I don't even understand how anyone can even let those words out of their mouth. It's so irrelevant. I want to switch to more fun subjects. This was a pretty exciting summer. We've had Burning Man, we've had Barbie, Beyonce, and someone whose name doesn't begin with the letter B, Taylor Swift. So I want to know, did you go to Burning Man? And what do you think of Burning? What do you think of Burning Man?
No, I don't do anything. No, I would never volunteer. So I have a lot of friends that go to Burning Man. I have a lot of burner friends. However,
are they old middle-aged white guys?
No, they're not actually.
Oh, good.
That's actually a good question. But no, actually, the people that I know that go to Burning Man are all women of color.
Interesting.
It's random. However, no, I would never voluntarily go outside in the dirt. Or like if I don't have, I'm not going to do that. I'm not really into camping either. I'm not I'm not outdoorsy in that way.
I'm with you.
I like water sports. We talk about skydiving, but I'm not going in the desert on purpose. No.
My idea of camping is like maybe a 3-star hotel.
Right, like a cabin with
Yes.
running, with
With
a
bad
pool in the
Wi-Fi.
back, a
Bad
jacuzzi.
Wi-Fi. That's camping.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
How about Barbie? I'm assuming you saw the film.
So, okay, so I was just talking to my one of my closest friends. I have not seen Barbie, but that's not because I didn't want to
Whoa.
see it. It's because I am afraid of COVID. So I don't go to a lot of movies, although I was going to go one day, and then I had right when I was going to purchase it, I was reading about the new surge. So I was like, okay, I'll just wait for it to come on my TV, but it's taking too long. So as soon as it's on there, I'm going to watch. I've seen a million clips
So
from
as soon
Barbie.
as COVID goes away, I'm going to see Barbie.
I know. I was never going
You
away.
might be waiting a long time.
I know. I mean, and maybe I'll go this weekend in a mask. I do that. I do many things in masks. I'm still wearing my mask, and I have not, knock on wood, had COVID at all. So
Okay.
it's working.
How about
Um,
Beyonce or Tay-Tay or Tay-Tay?
I went to I didn't go to Taylor Swift, although I love her.
Mhm.
I went to Beyonce,
Mhm.
and I'm going again to her last show in New Orleans. So I went here in Washington, D.C. Unfortunately, I randomly chose the second day, which if people are following sort of the tour, that's the day that it was like thunder and lightning and raining.
Mhm.
So thunder, lightning, sort of the show was late. We were in the rain. I was in a poncho, a whole thing, but epic experience. And I felt full circle because my dad told me this summer that I was also at Diana Ross in the rain in 1983 as a 1-year-old baby. So
Wow.
I was like, this is my destiny. It was my destiny to be at Beyonce in the rain.
You are Destiny's Child.
Yeah,
There you go.
clearly.
So now we must address the elephant in the room, which
Yes.
is Stray Kids. You are obsessed with
I am obsessed.
with
Yes.
K-pop
Yes, I am.
and the Stray Kids in particular, and
I'm
maybe
more
even
obsessed
one
with
of them.
NCT. I'm more obsessed with NCT than Stray Kids. So the way the language works, and if any of the Gen Z listeners or K-pop fans are listening, they will understand the language I'm about to use. My alt group is NCT. But I love Stray Kids, and I just saw them in August in LA, and I've never had so much fun screaming at the top of my lungs at a concert. I'm almost 42 years old. I discovered K-pop completely by accident. I clicked on a video on YouTube, a Blackpink video, when I was really bored in the pandemic and I was out of episodes of Law and Order to watch, and I was like, "What is this?" And it was so amazing. So if you grew up watching Michael Jackson or Janet Jackson, that's what K-pop is. It's just a big scale dance performance. Obviously, the music is good too, but it's just so epic, and the concerts are incredible. And I'm very, I mentioned my first sport was gymnastics. There's something about choreography that just makes me feel joy deep down. So Stray Kids was at the VMAs, and I posted sort of the video I took, and I didn't even take that video because I was going to post it anywhere, but it was just so funny because it was just literally how I very much was. That's how, first of all, that's how I am at a concert. I don't care. I'm not shy. I am loud and yelling and jumping and screaming and trying to sing in Korean, but not very successfully usually. But Stray Kids is just a source of joy. And I think there's a misperception that the only people who like K-pop are young. Yeah, that's a lot of people that are young. But I just went to a convention in Los Angeles, and I would say I was median age. At 42, there were people there in their 70s, 60s and 70s, 50s, 60s and 70s, because the music is that good. The music is good, and the performances are Michael and Janet Jackson.
Mm-hmm. I know.
So
I have every BTS album.
Oh,
No, I don't. I'm lying.
BTS. Oh, you don't?
I
Okay.
don't.
But maybe, here's the thing. I interviewed Senator Mazie Hirono this week,
I know.
and one of the fun facts about her is that she is the biggest BTS fan in the Congress.
That's crazy.
And she knew deep cuts. She
Mhm.
was not just, saying I like BTS. She was like, this is my favorite song. This is her bias. She was like, my bias is Jungkook. My bias is also Jungkook. And I think it's just a source of joy. Look,
Mhm.
we just lived through, still knock on wood, living through a global pandemic.
Mhm.
Climate change is a crisis we're seeing every day. Democracy teetering. I needed a source of joy. So that's what K-pop is for me.
Maybe we can send some K-pop albums to Jim Jordan, because it seems like
Maybe
he might need a little joy in his life.
He needs some joy.
So you are very active on TikTok. I'm a fan of your videos, and I want to say they're funny, they're sarcastic, they're obviously laced with a lot of righteous indignation. They're self-deprecating, which is always very charming. But they're also kind of performative. When we were talking about a little Zerlina or even big Zerlina, was there ever any acting pursuits along the way? Because you have a little bit of an actor in you.
I know. Well, no, but my mom wanted to be an actress. She moved to New York City in her 20s. She wanted to be an actress. So my mom's she passed away. So my late mother, rest in peace, rest in power. But she moved to New York, wanted to be an actress. She was a great singer. She was very dramatic. So I was raised by a very stoic, serious, although very sarcastic and funny dad, with a mom that was oh my God, all the time. So I think it rubbed off, and I am a little,
I'd say,
dramatic. But I don't know, I think that TikTok is a platform that I'm really intentional about what I post there, and I've been really intentional about trying to sort of tap into the other side of my brain, because I'm always sort of using one side of my brain and very analytical. And I think TikTok allows me to be more creative. And I have been told by most people that I meet that I am funny. I don't know if that's true, but
you're
people
funny.
say that.
I did stand-up comedy for a while.
That.
I kind of have a high bar of funny. I'll tell you're funny. You are funny.
People say that. They're like, you should be a stand-up comedian. And I don't know that I have the courage to do that. So I think TikTok is a nice little medium space where I can sort of test out the funny things that I'm thinking that people do laugh at when I tell them in real life. So I just recreate that, because I think that I think the cable news version of Zerlina is not really me. It's not me. There's a filter between me and the audience. There's a pile of makeup on my face. There's, the filter of sort of the cable news system that, only allows you to go so far when talking about certain things or being a certain way. And so I like TikTok for the freedom that it allows me to express myself and be funny and actually show my personality, because one of the things my mom always said is you live one time on this earth. And she always used to get on me for being too serious. She's like, you are too serious. You need to lighten up.
Well,
you've
achieved that. You definitely achieved that. But so you mentioned cable news. I was one of many people disappointed when your show got canceled. Why was it canceled?
I don't know insights into any of the inner workings. I think with TV, it's ratings and audience size, and so that's usually the reason why certain shows don't continue on. But what I will say is that I think the media landscape is changing right now in real time, and one of the reasons why I say that is because nobody has cable, in the same way they used to. People are not watching cable news the way they used to. People are not consuming TV and news the way they used to. Everything is streaming. Or, for example, in my own life, as soon as I got on TikTok and I was just really before I posted one video, I was just trying to see what it is. That's why I feel like my videos sort of they're gaining traction already, because I'm not showing up as cable Zerlina. I'm showing up as oh, I know what this app is. I understand the inside jokes here and the conversations that are happening on this app. And so I'm showing up and jumping into the public square where TikTok already is, whereas cable news feels stale and behind. And the audience, the data shows this is not me making it up. They're old. They're my dad's age. Not that he looks young, but he's 67 years old. And that's basically the age demographic that watches cable news. And I think that's changing. I think we're getting to a place in the media landscape where we're taking away the filter. I don't need the filter between me and the audience. I can talk directly to them. And that's what TikTok allows me to do. That's what YouTube allows people to do. And I think that that's where the media is headed.
Let's talk about another subject I know is very important to you, and that is racism in America today. To me, it seems like we're at one of the worst points in history that we've ever been in, because all the quiet shit is now said out loud. You have pretty much KKK-like crap happening in the Tennessee State House. You know, let's just kick out the 2 black guys and keep the white lady. Like, it's no more like going into a field in the middle of the night wearing a robe and a hood and burning a cross. Now it's like, let's just do it inside the chambers of Congress and everywhere else.
Right.
Do you feel that way?
I do. During the 2016 campaign, I had several colleagues on the campaign for Hillary Clinton. I worked in the communications department who were Black and Latino, API, and we used to have meetings by ourselves, on our own, to try to figure out the way we were going to make the case for how urgent the situation was in terms of Donald Trump's normalization of racism and the fact that he was making it fine to be openly racist again, out in public, loud and proud about it, without any consequences. Like that was fine again. And I think in 2016, we recognized it. We talked about it when he hired Steve Bannon. If you go back on YouTube and you look up Hillary Clinton, Reno, Nevada, she gave a speech about the alt-right, the Breitbarts of the world, and the white supremacist movement, hate movement, I think is what she called it at the time. And we're just living through the consequences of the normalization of racism. And that's what January 6th was, a manifestation. It's not a surprise that happened. It's the culmination of many years of Donald Trump normalizing racism, but also America not being able to confront its own history.
And do you agree with me when I say that I believe racism is at the root of Trumpism, that MAGA, Make America Great Again, really just means Make America White Again? And that's all that these people are seeing and hearing and voting for. Period.
Yes, I do. And even if you are voting for Trump or Republicans and you don't necessarily wake up with that at the top of your own mind, what I always say to people who try to say, well, just because you voted for Trump doesn't make you racist, or I'm not racist just because I voted for Trump. And I say, I don't really know what's in your heart. And I don't actually care what is in your heart, right? I only care about your behavior and how that impacts me and people who look like me. So what you did is tolerate racism to the point that it was not a deal breaker in who you supported. And the person you support not only is explicitly using racist rhetoric, they are also pushing and supporting racist, harmful policies that actually hurt communities of color. So if supporting that doesn't make you racist, I don't know what does. Like, for me, it's like, I don't know, there's no other word to use.
I ended a 30-year relationship. I had a friend who we were friends for 30 years. He was always a Republican. You know, we disagreed on abortion and taxes and whatever. But the relationship ended because we had a conversation where I literally said that to him. Like, I can't be friends with someone who wants to save on taxes so much that they support someone who persecutes other people.
Yeah.
That was it. It is kind of, when you hear people say, oh, people are voting for Trump because of economic reasons, that's bullshit. It's just all racism, And
the
so
media
obvious.
has a role to play too in trying to frame it as economic anxiety too. I mean, they're at fault in trying to call in anything else. And I think the reason they do that, I never did that, but the reason why some folks in the media do that is because they don't want to call, let's be honest. The majority of the people who work in the media and write these stories, they are white. and their entire social friend family
Mm-hmm.
group is also white, because the data
Absolutely.
shows that most white people do not have any friends or close associates who are not also white. And like the caveat there is like there are a lot of white Americans, I hear from them on my show, they'll call in, who will say like, my friend, I do have a black friend. And I'm like, do they work for you?
Right.
And then usually that's usually the only question you have to ask. The answer is usually yes. And then it's like, that's not your friend. Like, that's your employee that you're friendly with. And that's great that you treat them well and you like them as a person, but that's not your friend. And they don't, the power dynamic is not correct. So again, it's like the majority of folks in this country who are white, I think the question for you is, think about your friend group, think about what experiences and lived experiences you're exposed to, because we see this with things outside of race. If you're, if you have a family member or a close family friend or a friend who is, in the LGBTQ plus community, you're more empathetic, you're more supportive of gay rights. I mean, part of it is you're just not interacting with any black people. But then also, I just don't buy the argument that, oh, well, I just like tax cuts, or like, I should not be held accountable for the harm caused by the politicians I support. Like it, I think child separation during the Trump administration is one moment where I was like, I mean, if you guys still support him after this, then you
are
can't,
him. I mean, that's,
you can't stand there and say like, oh, I'm not racist. This has nothing to do with race. Like, it does. We're not stupid. And I refuse to believe that, many members in the media are either. They're not. What they feel uncomfortable doing is labeling people racist, because some of the people who believe some of these things are people they like, and they don't want to, they don't want to alienate those people.
People they play golf with. Because this may come as a shock, but white people play a lot of golf.
Nice guy. He's a nice guy.
Yeah,
but,
nice.
He's not nice.
Right.
Like, who you support politically, that I believe your vote, I mean, it's your power, it's your voice, but it's also a value. It's like, it's a vote for your value set.
Yes. You
right?
don't get to separate that out. It's like, just because you don't put kids in cages doesn't mean you're not. If you support Trump, then you are Trump. Plain and simple.
Yeah.
My last question to you,
Yeah.
which is probably one that you don't get asked often, or maybe ever, but it is a window into the soul. I think music is a big window into one's soul. So give me your top 5 musical artists of all time.
Oh, it's hard.
Stray Kids.
All time? That's not. They're not going to go all time. They just started. All time. My favorite singer is Mariah Carey. That's not a surprise, because I just really like pop music.
Sure.
And R&B. So Mariah Carey is my favorite singer of all time. Michael Jackson. My cat is named Michael Jackson.
Wow. My dog is named Ringo. Look at that.
Oh, that's
They should get together and jam.
That's so good. I mean, I just call him Michael. So full disclosure at this point, like, I just call him Michael. It's been many, many years. He's an older cat. So it was a long time ago when I named him, but he's not, he's Michael. I just saw Diana Ross. I'd have to put her on this list because I saw her live this year, and 40 years after I saw her in the rain the last time. And incredible, just legendary. So that would be 3. This is so hard. Oh, I got to pick somebody in hip hop.
Starts with a B.
I mean,
we talked about it
she's
before.
Still going, so it's hard to say all time, I mean, I guess Mariah Carey is still going too, but yes, Beyonce goes.
They don't have to be dead.
Beyonce has to go on the all-time list, because in terms of performance, also, I mean, it's the full artistry of it all. The thing that I love about Beyonce, and I was somebody who would love Destiny's Child, but then I kind of went through a moment where I was like, I'm mad they broke up, and I'm a little upset. But then when she had her self-titled Beyonce album come out, it was when I realized that she really had something to say. Before that, you know, she made good songs, but it wasn't really until she was like in charge of her management herself and her own image and everything that she was able to say something. And I was like, she's saying something. I love how she's able to utilize her art to like express, you know, similar things to what I express, just in a different way and through a different medium and mechanism.
All right, so that's 4. You got one more.
No, what's the last one? This is hard.
Biebs.
No, I would put Donny Hathaway on my list.
Very good.
Because
that's a great choice.
I find that I go to my Donny Hathaway playlist when I need like my soul soothed a little. It's just, there's something about the tone of Donny Hathaway's voice that soothes my soul. So I'd have to put him there too.
Well, that's a great list. This was a great chat. I hope you'll come back.
Yes.
And thank you for coming on today.
Thank you for having me. It was such a fun conversation.
All righty. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
This episode of The Back Room was edited and produced by me, Andy Ostroy. It was co-edited and co-produced by Maddie Rosenberg and co-produced by Jen Hammoud. Our theme song was composed by Andrew Hollander, and our logo was designed by Cricket Langell. And special thanks to Patricia Wind. Please take a moment to rate and review the podcast, and also follow or subscribe. Until next time, keep your eyes on Washington, Hollywood, and your own backyards, and have a great week.